Welcome to the Putting Couch. Today we have a special presentation of the Putting Couch presented by the SeeMore Putter Company's tour team. I'm Jim. I'm with Ted and Cody. It's 20 years since the greatest championship probably in major history, Payne Stewart winning Pinehurst, the most dramatic putt in U.S. Open history, probably the most dramatic final round putting performance in U.S. Open history. You had the world's greatest players coming together, and you had Payne Stewart, who one of the great players of all time, and he had risen above challenges of the past 4 years, the past few years, and at the age of 42, put together his finest moment in winning that U.S. Open. So that is 20 years ago at Pinehurst. So it was a round of destiny in looking back, most certainly. And we do believe, I think, that probably those final moments are etched in golf history is one of the greatest ever. And we have the great pleasure today of having on our great friend, Mike Hicks, who was Payne Stewart's caddy. And Mike Hicks was with Payne Stewart his entire career. And Mike, we are really excited to have you on today to talk about Payne Stewart, talk about that U.S. Open at Pinehurst and the legacy. So welcome to the Putting Couch, Mike.
Well, it's my pleasure, Jim, and it's good to be here with Cody and Ted and yourself. And 20 years, it's gone by fast. It's hard to believe, really. 20 years has passed so quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing, Mike. When I first got out there on tour, you were kind enough to show me the ropes and help me go to the right places and talk to the right people and sort of steer me in the right direction. That make me look so as a newbie out there. So I appreciate our friendship, and you sort of take me under my wing, your wing when we're out there. Tell me how, the relationship you and Payne had was just unreal. You could see it on TV. Just the mannerisms you guys have, it's just like you could complete his sentences. How did you guys met, and how did you start caddying for him?
Well, I met him, I don't know, probably 82 or 3 when he first got on tour. His caddy was one of my closest friends. His name was Rob Kay. He was a Canadian, and I used to, stay with him a lot. We were same age. So we hung out a lot together. So I got to know Payne through Rob. And I think it was 1987, 86 or 87. We were in Japan, and I was there caddying for Curtis Strange. I split time with another caddy with Curtis. Curtis used 2 caddies. He didn't like having just one. So I worked half the year, and this guy named Don Wanstall caddied half the other half of the year. So we're in Japan, and Payne had fired Rob, and I was like, half, I wasn't full time with Curtis. So I went up to Payne and I said, listen, he had hired this guy from Jacksonville, Florida. His name was Tim Davies. He'd never caddied before in his life. And he had hired this guy. And so I went up to Payne and I said, listen, if it doesn't work out with Tim, I'd like a shot at the job. So long story short, that didn't last very long. I think he might have started the next year. This was in November of 86, I think. And Tim lasted a month in the 87 year. Payne came to me and said, hey, you want to give it a try for a month? And I said, sure. I was still part-time with Curtis. So we went for a month. Could have won all 4 tournaments. We finished in the top 10 all 4 weeks.
Wow.
He just couldn't. He didn't have the mental capacity to close the deal. I mean, he was always right there. He's a money machine, but he just, I don't want to say choked down the stretch, but for lack of a better word, that's what it was. He would choke it off coming down the stretch. So literally 2 weeks into our relationship, he started working with Dick Coop. And, Dick Coop is a sports psychologist at the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
I lived in Hillsborough, North Carolina, which was 15 miles away. So Payne would come to Chapel Hill to work with Dick, and I would get to go and sit in on the session. And a lot of that work was done on the golf course. So, and I just would, reinforce what Dick was trying to get him to do with his mental game. And it just all came together. I mean, he started winning tournaments, and, the next 12 years were a lot of success.
Mike, you mentioned, being on the bag for 12 years. Can you give us a little bit of insight on what it takes to be with somebody? Obviously, you're with them, day in and day out, and I'm sure you built a very, tight friendship over the years. What does it take to be with somebody for that long in terms of a caddy, and player relationship? And, obviously you guys were incredibly successful. So can you give us a little insight on what it takes to do that?
Well, it takes, obviously you have to be compatible. You have to have a lot in common. I mean, you're with them, basically a lot more than they're with their wives. So, it is a form of a marriage. And, like all marriages, you're going to have your ups and downs, but you have to be compatible, and you have to, have some of the same interests, a lot in common. And Payne and I were both, outgoing. He liked sports. I like sports. He liked to hunt and fish. I like to hunt and fish. I mean, we just had a lot in common. So we just hit it off. And like I said, I got to know him through Rob. So it's not like we were strangers and he was hiring somebody he didn't know. He kind of knew. And I'd gotten a decent reputation as a caddy. I mean, Curtis wasn't going to hire just anybody. So, I'd had some success with him. And I think really Payne liked the idea that I was, I wasn't really a yes man. I just didn't agree with everything. And I think that's, the mark of a good caddy. A lot of guys, just will agree with the player. But I wasn't like that. I would stick my neck out. I wasn't always right, but you have to be right 99% of the time or you don't last. So, I just feel like he liked the fact that I wasn't just a yes man, and that I would stick my neck out, and I didn't, I made him think. Sometimes they don't think straight, especially under the gun. They, things are going so fast, and and then that's where I came in, and that's where Dick Coop came in. Payne learned to have a pre-shot routine. He learned to breathe under the pressure. He just learned a lot of things from Dick, and we were just it was a great team, and I came along at a really good time.
So would you say that it was sort of business on the golf course and then a friendship the rest of the time? Is that how you balanced that out?
Absolutely. We were good friends off the course. We did a lot of things together. We, occasionally our families got together. We definitely had a good relationship. I stayed with him quite often on the road, especially when we would go overseas. So we were very close friends, and it was a hard thing when he passed. I not only lost my boss, but I lost a good friend.
No question about it. And we're going to get into that. This is the Putting Couch presented by the SeeMore Putter Tour Team. Very, very special day today. We're talking to Mike Hicks. We're talking about his relationship with Payne Stewart as his caddy, as his friend, as somebody who was a partner in greatness. And you did hit a little bit of a tough patch there. In the mid to the later 90s where he didn't win. And what was that like, Mike? And how did you guys keep it together during that stretch?
Well, it was 1993, I think it was. His deal was up with Wilson. So John Daly had just come on the scene, I think 90. I don't know, when did he win the PGA? 91 or something? 92? Something like that.
91.
Yeah, 91.
Okay, so Payne had a big ego, which, to be successful in this sport and to play at a high level, you have to have a big ego. And Payne had one, but he didn't want to play second fiddle to John Daly. So he decided to sign with Top Flight, Spalding at that time, Spalding Top Flight, and be their poster child. And because Wilson was offering Payne the same amount of money to re-up for 5 years as Top Flight was. But like I said, he wanted to be the poster child. So we went with Top Flight. And I remember that first tournament, we showed up at Tucson. He came out, we started playing Top Flight ball, which they were just getting into the ball business. So he was playing a ball that he wasn't familiar with. He was playing a cast club, which he'd always played a forged club. The cast club also had offset, and that was at the beginning of square grooves. So there were all kinds of variables there that really he was not accustomed to, and his ball flight changed, which inevitably your swing is going to change to try and bring your ball flight or try and get your ball flight back to where it once was. And things just went downhill. I mean, I think it was 94. We were higher. We went to Europe like 4 trips. And I think we were higher on the money list in Europe than we were here in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, because he just couldn't play over here. He couldn't perform. And then in 95, he got lucky. Scott Hoke, he finally played a decent tournament there in Houston, and Scott Hoke kind of spit the bit coming in, so to speak, and kind of handed Payne the Houston Open. So we won that year. But then we dry again, 96, 97. 98, Top Flight finally came out with a decent ball, and they gave him some forged irons, blades. So 98, his game started to come back around, and we contended there at Olympic Club. And then the deal was up. So in 99, when he came out, we were no deals. We played what we wanted to play. I remember meeting him in Orlando in January of '99. I flew to Orlando, and then we were going to fly private to Texas to work with Chuck Cook, his teacher there in Austin. And he picked me up at the airport, and we went right to Edwin Watts. And I was like, "What are we doing here?" And he said, "Well, you got to pick out a golf bag." I said, "Really? For real?" He said, "Well, you can pick out one, but you can't pick the smallest one." So we compromised, and I had a little mid-sized bag with nothing on it. It was great. I mean, I carried that thing from January till June. So it was great. But we were playing, we were playing Mizuno irons. We were playing whatever he wanted to play. A Titleist golf ball back in the bag. And, he showed up out there that year and on the West Coast and hit the ball phenomenally. First 4 weeks of that year. I mean, we were making cuts and finishing 20th and missing everything, 20th, 30th. So all that was lacking was making putts. And lo and behold, Arnie Cunningham came to us at Pebble Beach and said, "Hey, have you seen this putter?" And Payne said, "Where'd you get this thing, Kmart?" And Arnie said, "No, but there's a system behind it." So we went through the whole spiel with hiding the dot and, or hiding the red line, hiding the red dot, and then, immediately Payne felt like his hands were behind because he had always been kind of a forward presser and putted with offset. And so I remember we got that putter on Wednesday. And we immediately went down. Well, we played 9 holes, I think, practice round. And then that afternoon, we went down to Pebble. We putted with it for about 3 hours. We spent a lot of time down at Pebble putting with it. We got done with that session. He looked at me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, you can't putt any worse." So he threw it in the bag, and we made them all and won the tournament. Long story short.
What did it add to him using that SeeMore putter? I mean, did it, and other than, you know, him seeing putts go in, what did it give him and you?
Well, it was a consistent setup, which Payne was one that, I mean, I numerous times saw him start out with his hands low. And by the end of the round, he may, with the toe off the ground, by the end of the round, the heel may be off the ground. That's how much his hand position would. Payne was a field player, field putter. I mean, I would say, what are you going to use? This is stroke 998C this week, or, you know, I mean, he would try anything, which, you know, kudos to him. I mean, he wasn't scared to change and try whatever to make putts. But he was just very inconsistent. I mean, had Payne Stewart but had he been the putter that he was the year in 1999, it would have been scary how many tournaments he would have won. Scary. But, you know, that the SeeMore putter brought consistency in his setup, in his, you know, just his whole stroke. And, you know, putting is all about confidence. And, you know, you start seeing the ball go in and, you know, it just snowballs. And that's really what happened in 1999 once he got the SeeMore putter.
Incredible. So you kind of glossed over it, but you went out and won that week, huh? And then and then that took him to a different level. Obviously, that was, you said, the missing piece of the puzzle was that putting confidence. So what happens between then and the U.S. Open?
Well, he played very consistently. I think we lost in a playoff at Hilton Head. He had the round of the day going at TPC that year on Sunday. Duval won that tournament, I think, at like 3 under par. Well, Payne was the course was just out of control, hard and fast that week, and he was 3 under par, playing the 17th hole, and we're getting ready to post a score. Duval was probably 3 or 4 groups at least behind us. We're getting ready to post a score if we can, you know, par the last couple of holes, and who knows, he may have won that week. And he makes a 9.
Oh, no.
On 17. So we go from finishing either winning the tournament or finishing at least second to finishing like 40th. And I remember that was a very, you know, it was not demoralizing to him, but I think his wife took it really hard, a lot harder than he did. I remember that. But, you know, he just carried that over. I mean, we played consistent golf every single week. And, you know, it obviously carried over to Pinehurst. And
so we're heading to Pinehurst now, Mike. And, you know, they said that was a different type of venue, than had been played in the U.S. Open before. But how did you guys, like, at what point did you start preparing for that U.S. Open? And how did you prepare for it?
Okay, well, it was a blessing in disguise. We missed the cut at Memphis. And Friday night, we had played early on Friday. We missed the cut. I flew home. He stayed Friday night and then flew privately Saturday morning to Pinehurst. But Saturday morning, I got up, went down, walked the golf course, you know, got all my work done. He showed up Friday afternoon with Chuck Cook, and they took a sand wedge and a putter and went out and just walked the course and chipped and putted, just the two of them. And Payne really never ever carried a yardage book. That was the only week I ever saw him carry a yardage book. So that day, on that Saturday prior to the U.S. Open, he walked around and he marked, and he had a Sharpie with him, and he marked where you could not play from, and where you did not want to hit the ball. And in 72 holes that week, he hit it in one of those areas one time. So 71 holes.
Wow.
He played without hitting it in an area where he could not play from. And he had to make, it was on the second hole on Sunday, he had to make 8-footer for bogey on our second hole of the day on Sunday. Well, anyway, so I meet him on Sunday morning. And I meet him in the clubhouse, and first thing he says, "Come here, I want to talk to you." He said, "You didn't do a very good job last week."
In Memphis.
In Memphis. And I said, I said, I'll agree to that. I said, but I really think we both were somewhere else. I think we were both thinking about this week. Because in 1998, he proved to himself that he could still do it. You know, we led that tournament every day. I mean, we were in the lead right up until the end of that week. You know, and that's a lot to hold the lead for 4 days and then finally lose it, you know, I think on about the 70th hole or whatever. But it did prove to him that he could still do it. So we were thinking about that U.S. Open from, you know, day one of 1999. I mean, I know I was, and I think he was in the back of his mind. And then, you know, the week before we were both kind of hyped up about the next week. And he just, you know, he wasn't into it. I really wasn't into it. And he called me out on it on that Sunday morning.
Now, Cody's, I got a question for you, but so real quickly, what you're saying is that Sunday morning, and this is before. So this is the Sunday before you guys win the U.S. Open. And he looks at you and he says, hey, we've got some unfinished business. This is what it's all about. We're going to win this U.S. Open.
Yeah, I mean, yes. He called me out and said, you know, I didn't do a very good job. And he was right. I didn't. But look, there's a lot to this week, this U.S. Open story. The next day on Monday, we're playing our second practice round, and Dick Coop shows up for that one. And so we get on the third hole, and we're walking down number 2, and I had Coop. We were walking kind of away from Payne. He was walking with Chuck, and I was walking with Dick. And I said, you know, he's not picking his intermediate target out. He hasn't been picking it out the last couple of weeks. And Dick said, oh, really? He said, yeah. I said, yeah, he's not picking out his spot, you know, which I would reinforce for every shot he would hit when I caddied for him for 12 years. I'd say, nice and slow. Get your spot nice and slow. Get your spot, meaning get your intermediate target. So on the third hole, Payne pulls out his 3-iron or whatever it was. He's going to lay out, you know, it's a short little par 4. So he's going to lay out. He's kind of getting in his routine, and he's getting over the shot. And Dick says, where's your intermediate target? And Payne backs off. You know, he looked at him like, okay, you got me. Next one. So that immediately a light went off in his head. He knew that he was missing a very important part of his pre-shot routine. That he wasn't picking out his intermediate target. Boom, light went off, started picking out his target, and, you know, the rest is history. I mean, we played another practice round on Tuesday, so he really only played Pinehurst 3 days. He had never seen it, number 2. So he played 3 practice rounds. Wednesday, we did absolutely nothing. We had a bucket of balls. He putted for about half hour or so, and we were gone from Pinehurst at like 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
Wow.
He went home and rested. I think they went to a movie, he and Tracy, and he just, you know, got, you know, because that's a mental grind that whole week. And he knew that. I mean, because, listen, in the 90s, when I first started caddying for Payne Stewart, every U.S. Open, you can go back and look at this, but every U.S. Open, he was on that leaderboard. Every single one of them. At some point, he was contending. Because he loved the U.S. Open. He was a patriotic guy, and that was his. You know, this was our national tournament, and it meant a lot to him. And so he really got hyped up for the U.S. Open. And if you look back, I mean, I don't know what it is now, but I don't know if he still has it. But he had the lowest scoring average, and I think he still does in the history of the U.S. Open.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I know he did, and I know he in 2000. When was the last time we were in Pinehurst? 15 or something? 14.
I think that's right. When Keimer won, I believe,
right? 14.
Right?
Keimer's 14.
Yeah.
And you know, they had a memorial service or whatever there for him, and I had to speak in front of all these people, and I brought that stat up. He had the lowest score, and that includes Nicholas. That includes all of them.
Wow. That's incredible because he obviously had, you know, played for the majority of the 98 U.S. Open really well. He had won in 99 already. So obviously had a high level of confidence, that with that, he knew he could win again, like you said.
Right.
while you guys were walking, the practice runs, how different was Pinehurst? Because I think I remember them saying something about the rough wasn't as high as it had been in previous U.S. Opens. And then obviously it's a mental grind that week. Any week out there is a mental grind, but especially a major championship. So, I know you touched on it a little bit, but how difficult is that?
Well, Pinehurst, that particular week, I mean, it's different now since they came in and restored it back to where it used to be. But that particular week, it wasn't chip out rough because they didn't want you chipping out and then wedging the ball to the green. They wanted you to try to hit the ball on the green with no spin to those greens, which is impossible.
Right.
You can forget it. If you hit it in the rough that week, you were not hitting the green. The key to it was you had to make sure that next shot was in a place that you could play from, which he did an incredible job. Now, he drove it good that week, but did we hit all the fairways? No. But when we missed a green, we missed it in a spot that he could, have a chance of getting it up and down. And now there is no rough there. It's just it's your native grass, and there's fairway, and then there's sand and native grass. So it's totally plays different now. But that particular week, they didn't want you. The rough was probably as low as I'd ever seen at U.S. Open, but that was in the in the setup. They wanted you to try to hit the green from the rough.
Hicksy, that Thursday and Friday of tournament week, the memories that you guys had going through those 2 days. I mean, you had David Duval being number one in the world, Tiger number two, Mickelson. I mean, just I read something where it kind of sounded like a football game going on out there, just the loud cheers that was going on. What was Thursday and Friday like for you guys out there?
In the U.S. Open or any golf tournament, you're just trying to position yourself.
Right, so, you can't win it, but you certainly could lose it, right?
You can lose it, and then we got off to a good start. I can't remember exactly what our scores were, but we got off to good starts. We were on the board, which is all you can ask for. But like you said, the who's who in golf were right there. Vijay Singh. You had your, I don't know, probably 5 or 6, 7, 8 guys of the top 10 players in the world were right there on the leaderboard. And so he that particular week, he beat them all. He beat all the greatest players. All those guys came in playing great. And, he outlasted all of them.
So, as you're heading, as the tournament is evolving, you mentioned you guys had talked this Sunday prior about he wanted to kind of put Memphis in the rearview mirror. So you get through Thursday and Friday. Are you debriefing after every day? In a major championship like this, can you feel that there's more on the line in your relationship with him, or how was that? How did that play out?
No, not really. We've done it. We've been there before. We've done it. You're not really dissecting or going over, mistakes or. I will say this though. 98, the Sandfield divot got us on Sunday at Olympic Club. So that week, he practiced every day when we hit range balls. He would find a patch that was full of sand and he'd hit shots out of it.
Wow.
And on the 5th hole, he hit it in a divot twice. Now, I don't know if you know what the 5th hole is like. The 5th hole there is now a par 4. It used to be a par 5.
They curve around to the left a little bit, didn't it?
Well, it was a par.
No, to the,
then.
Yeah.
It was a par 4 then, which was a par 5. Now it's a par 5 because they've added a new tee. So when we played it was a par 4. A very difficult shot, very difficult hole for a par 4. And twice out of the 4 days he was in the Sandfield divot and we made par both times. But that is, he was prepared for that just in case, because what had happened in 98, because he practiced it. Now, not many guys are going to going to do that, because what are the odds, that you're going to hit it in another divot? And we did it twice on the same hole.
Well, I think that shows how dialed in you guys were that week, being able, highlighting the fact that he's practicing something that had happened in the past, right. and it still happened that week. So he was prepared. It sounded like he was prepared for really any situation that was, that came about that week.
He really was. And I'll say this too, missing that cut in Memphis was such a blessing because that tournament didn't end till Monday. So
that's right.
All those guys that played and made the cut that week did not arrive and they had Tuesday, Wednesday to play at Pinehurst. We played 3 practice rounds and then we rested Wednesday. So like you said early, Jim, it was destiny. I'm a religious guy and I believe God had a plan, and I believe that it was in his plan, and because he knew he was going to take them in a few months, and that was that he used that to glorify himself. So, I truly believe that.
And that's phenomenal. So now, Mike, at this point in time, we're going to sort of bring it home. We're going to start off on Sunday morning here. Okay. Certainly the goosebumps you must feel. I mean, can you describe to us what it's like waking up on that Sunday morning? It's going to become the most memorable day in major championship history. But that morning, tell us about your routine, Payne's routine, all the way to the first tee, and then let's bring it home.
Well, I stayed in Pinehurst Wednesday night. That was it, because we played early on Thursday. Thursday I left, drove home 65 miles. So I stayed home Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. So Sunday morning I get up, I don't know, we were playing 2:30 or whatever it was. So, I mean, I didn't have to leave that early, but I left the house, I had wife and 3 kids at home. They're all very young. And so my wife, kissed me goodbye and had said good luck. And I drove to Pinehurst and got there. And so we get on the range to warm up. It was a very unusual day as far as the weather goes. It was, in the 60s. It was mist and rain. It was for a June, a mid-June day. It was a very unusually chilly. I had on a jacket. He comes out in a rain jacket, and he's hitting balls, and I can tell it's bugging him too much. It's too much. It's too much. The rain jacket's too much. And he's like, "You got to go get me some scissors." I said, "What do you need scissors for?" He said, "I'm going to cut the sleeves off." So I said, "What?" He said, "I'm going to cut the sleeves off. It's just bounding me up." So I go get the scissors. He whacks them off of just above the elbow. Hits a few more balls. That ain't enough. So he goes ahead and whacks it all the way off, and there you go. The sleeveless rain vest is born.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then he never took it off all day. I mean, eventually it warmed up to 70 degrees. I mean, I had to take my thing off because I was obviously we're working and walking, so I got a little warm. I had to take my stuff off, but he never took it off. He never changed his feel. Like I said, he was a feel guy, and he had a good feel going. And, he warmed up well, and we went to that first tee, and he stuffed it on the first hole and, made a nice birdie. And then they made that putt on number 2 for bogey. And then he hit it a foot on the third hole, which, the pin was a really incredibly hard pin. And he's trying to hit the ball in the middle of the green with a wedge, and he pulls it, and it ends up a foot from the hole. So Roger Maltby's walking with us, and he looked at me like, had the eyes wide open, what a shot. And I went, he pulled it. He wasn't trying to hit it over there.
So we're into the round. We're in the third hole. You're playing with Mickelson. Real quickly, since this is the Putting Couch brought to you by the SeeMore Putter Company's tour team, we're talking about the unbelievable experience through the eyes of Mike Hicks, who was there and really who's the only person right now that can tell this great story. The preparation on Sunday, I mean, how much time, real quickly, before he runs to the first tee, I mean, how much time does he spend hitting balls? How much time does he spend on the putting green of a round that means so much?
He was not. He was, it was strictly an hour. He wasn't. He didn't deviate from his
Okay.
normal time. He showed up. Um, he showed up an hour before, and we went through our normal routine. Hit balls for, I don't know what it was, 40 minutes. Hit bunker shots, chips, and then hit a few putts, and then off you go.
That's it. So at this point in time, you're not grinding out there on the putting green before you tee off.
No, because you see a lot of guys, especially a lot of inexperienced guys that'll, they're, what are you going to do? It's not like you're going to sleep till 9 or 10 o'clock. You're waking up to crack of dawn, and now you got to kill 6, 7 hours. What do you do? A lot of guys go out and, putt for an hour and then go in and have lunch. Then they change their routine. Instead of coming out an hour before, they're out an hour and a half before. And Payne had been through this before. I mean, he's 42 years old.
Yep.
We've been
Yep.
through all this. So he didn't deviate away from the normal routine.
So real quickly, you stuff the shot on 3 foot away. Where does that put you in the tournament, and how aware are you of sort of what's going on at that point in time on the course?
Well, that put us back in the lead. And, then there were a couple of 2-shot swings where Phil would make a bogey, we'd make a bogey, he'd make a birdie, and Phil would take the lead. Back and forth they were, and I remember the 9th hole, the par 3. They both made incredible pars. Payne had missed the green to the left, just over the bunker in the rough. There was a little strand of rough. Now he's got this chip that goes downhill and breaking probably 8 to 10 feet left to right. Phil has missed the green short and right and has no shot, and flops this thing up in the air, like only Phil can do, to 4 feet, makes his putt. Payne makes another 8-footer there for par. 2 of the greatest up and downs that I've ever witnessed. And then they just back and forth. I think we bogeyed 12. And then Payne bogeys 15, and now we get to 16, and Phil's ahead. Payne pulls a 2-iron into a tree. It drops down, 40 yards short of the green. He chips it way by 35 feet. Phil's got it pin high just in the rough. Hard chip. Phil makes bogey. Payne drains that bomb for par, which was the putt of the week. I mean, the putt at 18 was incredible, but the putt at 16, you can't read it, much less make it.
I think that was probably that's what I was going to ask you about, because you've got 3 holes left. You got to keep the round going. Obviously, we can go into 17, but after he chips it by, to have the wherewithal to stay in the moment and make that kind of putt is just incredible.
Did he ask you for a read or anything on that putt?
Listen, I did that particular week. I'm telling you, I did nothing. I pulled 1 club on a layup shot on the 10th hole on maybe Friday or something. I mean, I'd give him the yardage, tell him what the wind was, what it was playing, and then that he'd pull the club out. I did absolutely nothing. I didn't read a putt. I didn't look at nothing. I mean, he was in the zone. So, and he very rarely got to that level of concentration. You'd see it in the U.S. Opens, Ryder Cup, but week in, week out, at a John Deere or something like that. No, you'd have to keep him, you try to keep him focused on what was going on. I did a lot of, it was a hard job then, because he's asking everything. But when he would get to the level of focus that he would get in those certain tournaments, he could put it on autopilot, and then you just sit back and watch him go.
Yeah, him walking in that 35-footer too, as it started to get close. It is one of the coolest moments that I've ever seen.
Right.
So that puts you where, Mike?
Well, that puts us even, and then and I'm telling you, the shots at 17. I think it was 187 yards. Now this is 1999. We had a 6. They're both jacked up. We had a 6-iron stuffed at But Phil shot right behind Payne. It was one of the greatest shots I've ever seen with a 7-iron. That's a long 7-iron back in 1999.
I remember watching it on TV, and I think I was home for the weekend, and I was the only one in my house watching it. I don't know where the rest of my mom or dad was, but I remember at 17, I was like, he made that putt on 16, and 17, I was like, oh, he knocked it close, and then Phil, knocked it right on top of him. I'm like, this is awesome right here. It's fantastic.
By then everybody's in one spot, and I don't know if you guys have ever been to number 2, but that's kind of down in a little valley, and I don't know how many thousand people are down there in that little hole, and it bring chills to you, the roar and the excitement that was going on at that time. It's something I'll never forget. I don't think I'll ever have that feeling again. I'd like to, but it'd be hard to match that.
No.
Did he talk much in between the holes, like the final few holes, going from green to tee box or anything?
No, there was no chit chat going on. No, none between him, me, Phil. Nobody. It was, they were all in the, focused in on what was happening. And I remember at 18 when he hit it in the rough, we thought our drive was in the fairway. We get up there, and it's the worst lie of the week. And he did not even think about trying to hit the ball in the green. He said, "What have I got to lay up short of those cross bunkers?" I gave him the yardage. He pulled an 8-iron out, chopped it up there, and then wedged it 20 feet. And
so at this point, Mike, just to go back to 17 real quick, you have two guys just hit unbelievable shots. Phil misses his putt and Payne makes his putt. So Payne is up 1.
Yeah, we're up 1.
You're up 1. So you're going to 18, up 1.
Yep.
Thinks he hits a really, really great drive, and then you get up there and realize that it had taken a hop into the rough.
Yep, right. And Phil's in the fairway, yeah.
And Bill's in the fairway, and yet very workmanlike. Payne just looked at you and just said, "Hey, I need a number to get it back to the fairway."
Yeah, he looked at the line. He didn't even ask for the front yardage. He says, "What have I got to lay up short of those bunkers?" I gave him the yardage, and he chopped an 8-iron out short of it. And Phil hit a decent shot there. It wasn't great, but that's such a hard, especially under those circumstances. To hit the green is a great shot. But, is he going to make that 40-footer? Probably not. Although he hit a great putt.
He had a great putt, almost went in, and so now it comes down to you guys, 18 feet.
Yeah.
And what you take the pin and just get out of the way. What's going on at this point?
Yeah, I'm standing over there to the side of the green, and and I'll be honest with you, guys, you're thinking about Monday. At least I was, and that next day I was doing a charity event at my club with Payne, Paul Azinger, Hal Sutton, and Fred Couples. They were going to come play an exhibition match at my club to raise money for the North Carolina Children's Hospital. So, and this is the honest truth, I'm over there thinking, who am I going to get to fill in for him tomorrow?
You knew he was. You thought he was going to make this putt.
Well, no, I didn't think he was going to make it.
You didn't think he was going to make this putt.
No,
I got you. Yeah. Because you're going to be out there Monday in a playoff. Sorry, of course. Yeah. I got you. Okay.
Because I put a lot of work into this.
That's.
It's going on whether we're there or not. I know he sold tickets and everything. So he makes the putt, and the next day we sold another 3,000 tickets. That next day.
So that putt, did you, you saw what he was reading. Did he tell you what he's reading? Or you, no. But so you figured, hey, it's an 18-footer to win the U.S. Open. At this point in time, you're not going through the history books to know that no putt of 18 feet has ever been made on the last hole to win a U.S. Open. How many people that they said that those were the largest grandstands, I guess, ever at a U.S. Open on the final hole?
I would have to say probably. They were pretty far down the fairway on both sides. So
And how quiet was it? How quiet was it right in that moment before he hit the putt?
Definitely quiet. You could have heard a pin drop for sure. And there's an iconic photo that a guy took from on top of the clubhouse. And when the exact second that the putt disappears, there's two people that have realized the ball has gone in the hole. There's a guy that's standing right in line with the pin, right in line with the hole. His arms go up, and then my arms are up, and everybody else it hasn't reacted yet. So it's a very cool photo.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I mean, hopefully all the people listening to this podcast, which hopefully this thing is going to be circulated around the world, because this is an unbelievable story. We're getting the inside story of the greatest U.S. Open in history from Mike Hicks, who was with Payne Stewart, and the final putt drops. And at this point in time, you've won the U.S. Open. I mean, it was the greatest moment, I have to imagine, for everyone involved at that point in time.
Well, no question. And, it was, extra special for me. It was in my home state. I mean, how many, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but, I got to take the U.S. Open champion to my home and celebrate in my home with my family, my friends. I don't think that's happened very often.
So he came with you so there's interviews, there's all this stuff. And then at some point in time, you've got the U.S. Open trophy, and you jump in the car and head to your house.
Yeah. So Pat O'Brien was with us. He actually was driving my van. And I remember we stopped. We didn't get out of Pinehurst until about 10 o'clock that night after everything. And my next door neighbor at the time was a highway patrolman. He's escorting us back to 65 miles. So we stop at a convenience store, and we walk in there. Payne grabs a 12-pack of beer, and he's in jeans and a t-shirt at this point, and he throws the 12-pack up on the counter, and our friend Bobby Culler, who's in uniform, state patrolman, he's in the convenience store with us. And there's this woman waiting on us, and Bobby says to her, "Do you know that this guy just pulled off one of the biggest robberies in the history of the state?" This woman's like, "What?" She didn't know what to say. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. So he had calls from he got a call from Clinton that night, president. He got calls from all over the world, people calling him that night. So it was just an incredible, special night, in my life, and I know it was a very, one of the highlights in his life also. Just a special win, especially for me, being in the state of North Carolina.
And I know that, as you said, you're a believer, and Payne Stewart had gone through just a very strong sort of phase in his life where he sort of changed some things in his life and became a very, very strong believer. And I think, those friends, his friends, his family, is just tragic as this story turns. His faith, his belief, and family and friends, it gives comfort, I would imagine.
For sure. I mean, if had he not changed, his life, and the turnaround really started in 1998, and I saw it. I saw him blossom as a Christian, and it'd be very disheartening to think that he's not in heaven right now, and we'd never see him again. So. That did give comfort and solace to a lot of people, especially his closest friends and his family.
How do you see Payne's legacy? It's been unbelievable, and I think it grows every year. But Mike, how do you see Payne's legacy?
I see it as someone that was not afraid to look differently. He was comfortable in his own skin. He was a good father, a great father, a good husband. I think his legacy is he wasn't afraid of the moment. Obviously with 3 majors under his belt, and like I said, had that SeeMore putter been in his bag. Had the SeeMore been around and he had putted with it throughout his career, it would have been endless. And I truly believe, had he not passed as early as he did, he was at age 42. He was in really good shape. He was one of the first guys that took fitness serious because of a bad back, and he knew that his core had to be strong to keep the pain away in his back. So he worked out. He took care of himself, and I really think that there's no telling. I really believe he would have won more majors. I truly believe that.
Mike, I mean, obviously, after you guys had a long time of celebrating the victory, he still had to get ready for the Ryder Cup, right? Later that year in '99, and was a leader of that team. And I mean, obviously, they had an incredible week. Can you walk us through some of your memories from that Ryder Cup that year in '99?
Well, I'll say this. He wins the U.S. Open in June. We played 2 more tournaments. I mean, between we played the British Open, and then we had a month off. We went and played the British. Then we had another month off.
Wow.
We went and played the PGA.
Wow.
So he enjoyed that victory. He was not. Listen, he lost. It wasn't as. He just kind of lost his game there. And then we started playing. Prior to that Ryder Cup, we played. He started, trying to get the rust off because the Ryder Cup is very important. And by the time the Ryder Cup came around, he was back to playing decent golf. I mean, it never got back to the level we were at prior to or during the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
But he enjoyed that win, which, he deserved it. I mean, he was at a time in his life where he wanted to enjoy his family, and it was a great summer. That's all I can tell you. I mean, I worked 3 tournaments in 3 months.
And isn't it sort of fitting that sort of the last thing that people that really dial into that Ryder Cup, the last thing they'll remember is that, one of the great acts of sportsmanship, I think, of all time. Can you tell us just about that a little bit at the end of that tournament?
Well, the old Payne Stewart would have been thinking about his individual record and would have we would have played that hole out, to see who was going to win it legitimately. That was the old Payne Stewart. He would have been thinking about himself. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "It's over, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it's over." He said, "I should just give it to him." And I went, "Yeah, give it to him. It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's over." And so he did. He gave Monty the putt and gave him the hole. And but the old guy would have never even dreamt of doing that.
Yeah.
He would have never dreamt of doing it.
What do you miss the most about Payne?
Just the lightheartedness, the joking around. He was a practical joker, and liked to have a good time. He just, he was just a lot of fun to be around.
Well, Mike, hey, we have so appreciated this. This has been the Putting Couch Special Edition. I don't think we'll ever do one quite this well again, but you mentioned Pat O'Brien, another great friend of SeeMore, and we're going to have him on later in the week in another sort of special edition and kind of talk about, some of his side of the story, Mike. But, the amazing thing is that Payne Stewart on that final round had 24 putts at Pinehurst. And you'd already described these are some of the hardest greens that anyone will ever putt. And anybody that goes back and watches highlights will see Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson and even Payne. Guys missed putts that week, but to go around that final round in 24 putts in what was certainly the greatest overall clutch putting performance in U.S. Open history it's astounding. And anybody that's ever had a chance to go out and play Pinehurst and see those greens has to think to themselves, that's impossible.
Absolutely.
Well, it's funny. My sister was a very good junior golfer, and later in July, I forgot, or August, when the North-South was, down there, I caddied for my sister, and I remember, you guys and the course and everything. And she played in the second round. She played number 2, and she played pretty well. But I just could not believe how those greens. You described it. It was like an upside down bowl, and just trying. I mean, you barely touch it, and the ball just would go on forever. And I'm telling my sister, how in the world did they do this? And then we walking up 18, and I'm pointing out to her, this is where he hit in the rough, and he chipped out here, and this is where he made the putt. It was just, and now listening to you talk about it and describe it, I mean, I'm like, this is unreal.
So it's one of the more difficult venues, but without question. I mean, now that the greens are Bermuda, it'll be interesting to see what happens next time they're there, since the new Bermuda greens are in. I mean, they'll it'll be a lot harder. It'll be even harder than it was, for sure.
One of these days, we're going to pull together some sort of a Mike Hicks Invitational down there at Pinehurst and get the world down there to enjoy a round of golf, I think, with you. But Mike, it's been a pleasure. We look forward to talking with you again very, very soon. I mean, what a treat. And I think if people want to go to SeeMore.com, if people want to contact us to info@SeeMore.com, we can help direct them towards other, if they want to go back and do some more research on the 1999 U.S. Open at Pinehurst. Of course, I think if they Google it, they're going to find, from NBC and from every golf publication out there. Watch the drama, watch some of the final round highlights, and you'll feel it. So with that, we'll sign off on another edition of the Putting Couch, presented by the SeeMore Putter Company.
We appreciate you joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do wherever you're listening. Be sure to leave a rating and review, because that's how we get the Putting Couch podcast content in front of more people. Also, take a screenshot and share it on social media and tag us at SeeMore Putters or #Team SeeMore.